This is where that classic fireside ghost story is given the King Crimson treatment. A chillingly good album. The Raven that refused to sing is gothic prog, a whole new subgenre maybe. It's an obvious allusion to those fireside ghost stories of a bygone age. We've heard doff of the cap to Edgar Allan Poe and his tales of mystery and imagination. This is the album that coaxed Alan Parsons out of semi-retirement. One has to marvel at the translucent detail of this record and its spacious feel, its music that's replete with colour, nuance and texture, and a dynamic range that sends chills up your spine, which is so appropriate given the context. These narratives are woven beautifully like some intricate prog brocade, as we're regaled with these supernatural tales of wonder and imagination. The title itself is a nod to The Raven, which is a narrative poem written by the American poet Edgar Allan Poe and published in 1845. Poe is best known for his poetry and short stories, particularly his tales of mystery and the macabre. Poe was one of the country's earliest practitioners of the short story. His most recurring themes deal with questions of death, including physical signs and the effects of decomposition, premature burial. My word, it sounds like a great weekend, doesn't it? Many of his works are generally considered part of the dark romanticism genre, a literary reaction to transcendentalism which Poe strongly disliked. Horror author and historian H.P. Lovecraft was heavily influenced by Poe's tales, dedicating an entire section of his long essay, Supernatural Horror in Literature, to his influence of the genre. First 4 minutes of the opener, Luminol, is knotty, driven. It's a near-fusion instrumental workout, which gives way to a complex, beautifully wrought mini-suite that draws on influences from classic prog. According to Tom Jurek, this song was first performed by Wilson and his band on the Grace for Drowning tour. Wilson himself has weighed in on the story behind it. The song takes its inspiration from a busker who's there every single day. It doesn't matter what the weather is like, he's always there playing his acoustic guitar and singing these songs. Snow, rain, gale force, wind, nothing will stop him from being in his spot. He's the kind of guy who is so set in his routine that even death wouldn't stop him. This very much reminds me of Joni Mitchell's song For Free, which is off her wonderful Ladies of the Canyon album. I believe it is anyway. But whereas Mitchell uses her busker for a wider meditation on fame, Wilson's is about futility, I think, and anonymity. The idea that somebody will be completely ignored in life and subsequently completely ignored in death as well. This interminable loop of a kind of absence of self. And the music is fantastic. I love the soupy bass on this and the very icy tones of the guitar, reminiscent of 1980s Rush, I feel. That's before we get that haunting drone of what sounds like a mellotron, which, very much like this album, establishes a very intriguing sonic palette. It states that the songs he sings are learned from scratched LPs as he pauses to sip his tea. A rather sad and forgettable figure who sings well-thorough songs clumsily to appeal to those passing by. Perhaps to try and get them to notice him. The song says he strums the chords with less than grace, and this bears out in the atmosphere and the tone of the music as well. I mean, he's a rather pathetic figure. There's a nice part in this song where it launches into a kind of a Genesis-esque instrumental passage. Drive Home is a fascinating one. We see a man driving home with his girlfriend who keeps disappearing. It's later we learn that he's actually dealing with trauma or suppressing trauma because the ghost of his girlfriend says, I'm going to show you what happened on that night. I love the line in the song, you need to clear away all the jetsam in your brain and face the truth. And of course the motif in this song is that there's a terrible accident and she dies. Again, the idea of trauma leading to a missing part of this guy's life that needs to be rediscovered. And when I say motif, I say that because this feeds into the trope of the roadside ghost story. A genre replete with wrecks and ghostly hitchhikers. The man on this journey can't deal with the reality of what happened, so he blocks it out. The music is pastoral and lulling even. It leaves the listener feeling that they are drifting. A little bit like the man in this story who chooses the comforting drift of selective amnesia rather than the reality of what happened that night. Holy Drink is a diabolical tale, quite literally, where he challenges the devil, I think. I love these sort of Faustian stories. There's a wonderful song by Christa Berg where he plays cards with the devil, but I can't for the life of me remember what it's called. But there's hypocrisy at the very centre of this one. This holy drinker is a man that preaches temperance, yet is secretly an alcoholic himself. We are told in this story that he suffers an unquenchable thirst. The darker hues of the story are reflected in the music, which is jarring and quite King Crimson-y, I think. As this man foolishly challenges the devil to a drinking contest, which he subsequently loses and is dragged to hell. And the song ends with this dark, ominous burr and thud to represent this man's descent. The pin drop is another fascinating number. In fact, Stephen Wilson says of this one, the concept that you can be with someone because it's comfortable and convenient, not because there's any love or empathy. The song is basically sung by the wife, and she's dead. She's been thrown in the river by her husband, and she's floating down the river while singing this song from beyond death, from beyond the grave, as it were. Reminds me a little bit of that Nick Cave song from the wonderful Murder Ballads. This explores the idea that some relationships are pulled so tight, like a drum, where there's all this unspoken resentment and hatred, where even the tiniest of things, like a pin drop, can set off a violent and psychotic episode. The vocal has a wonderful yearning quality to it. I love the use of the tenor sax here. The fifth track explores the story of the watchmaker, who's incredibly controlled, almost machine-like, almost resembling or emblematic of that emotional precision. Like his timepieces, he is meticulous about his craft. The soft chime of the acoustic guitar, beautifully emblematic of the chimes of a watch. And this is before it launches into a gorgeous guitar arpeggio, almost reminiscent of Supper's Ready.
The watchmaker works all day and long into the night. Walking across the sitting room, I turn the telly.
I love the line in this song that the thing is broken now and can't be repaired. The watch becomes analogous with a broken relationship. I did mention Supper's Ready, but this is indeed very early Genesis, I think. But he never has any kind of emotional outburst. This couple have been together for 50 odd years and have just endured it because it's convenient. Wilson explains that the watchmaker ends up killing his wife and burying her under the floorboards of his workshop. But of course she comes back because she's been with him for 50 years. She's not going to leave him now. The song concludes when she comes back to take him with her, which Wilson suggests is another classic ghost story in a way. That idea of that surmounting guilt as well and tension reminds me a little bit of Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart. The title track is perhaps the saddest of all. It's an old man waiting to die, and he thinks back about his life with his sister who left him when she was very young, who passed away, and he's reflecting on his childhood and his older sister who was everything to him. Then the man becomes convinced that a raven who visits him is the ghost of his sister, and he demands that the raven sings to him. In his desperation, he's convinced if he can get this bird to sing, it will be final proof that this is his sister that's come to collect him and take him with her. The vocals on here are pleading, lift my soul and make me whole, sing to me, raven. The imperative here is revealing as it exposes his need for connection. It feels very reminiscent of the classic English parlour ghost stories of M.R. James, who wrote such stories late 19th, early 20th century, and are a favourite at Christmas time. Christmas is a time for ghost stories, the most famous being Dickens' A Christmas Carol, published in 1843. Overall, I think this is a fabulous album. It was well received as well. I think The Guardian said of it, The Guardian praised the album's stripped-down art rock thud before morphing seamlessly into all manner of wildly evocative soundscapes, melodic crescendos, and mellotron-drenched fever dreams. It's certainly an album that appeals to those of us with a more macabre sensibility, I think. I've already mentioned Nick Cave's Murder Ballads. If you love that album, I think you're going to enjoy this one. Or this one is not so much the emphasis on murder, more on the supernatural, which gives way for lots of ethereal and spooky soundscapes. I mean, how prog is that? These are beautifully produced and expertly arranged narrative compositions that focus on colour, nuance and dynamic range. So you've been watching a video of a classic album review. Do click like, subscribe and check that notification bell as Steven Tyler sings so you don't miss a thing. And other than that, I'll leave you with my closing salvo, which is hope you're well, staying safe, and of course that you keep listening.